Shadows of the past. Our journey to this new life was born out of necessity. Robert and I had been struggling to maintain the semblance of a happy marriage in the city, our daily lives consumed by work and the relentless pulse of urban living. Lucy, caught in the crossfire of our quiet battles, had retreated into her art, her drawings a reflection of a world where she could control the narrative. The decision to move was both spontaneous and calculated. We had spent months scouring listings, searching for a place that promised solace. This house, with its Victorian charm and storied past, seemed to offer exactly what we needed. Its age and character spoke to me in a way that modern builds never could. There was a history here, one that whispered through the walls and sang in the floorboards. As we unpacked, each room revealed its secrets slowly, as if the house itself was deciding whether to trust us. The kitchen, with its vintage fixtures and worn countertops, felt like the heart of the home, a place where countless meals had been prepared, where laughter and tears had been shared over the years. The living room was dominated by a grand fireplace, its mantel adorned with intricate carvings that hinted at the home's storied past. I imagined evenings spent here, the warmth of the fire casting a golden glow on our faces as we settled into our new life. Upstairs, the bedrooms each had their own personalities. Lucy chose the one with the bay window where the light streamed in during the day and the moonlight danced across the floor at night. Our room was at the end of the hall, its large windows offering a view of the sprawling garden where Robert had already begun to plan his renovations. The town itself was a character in our story. It was the kind of place where everyone knew everyone else, where secrets were shared over cups of coffee at the local diner and gossip spread like wildfire. The townsfolk welcomed us with polite curiosity, their eyes lingering a moment too long, as if trying to decipher what had brought us to their quiet corner of the world. There was a palpable history in the air, a sense of stories untold and mysteries waiting to be uncovered. The town square was dominated by an imposing clock tower that had stood watch for over a century, its chimes marking the passage of time with a solemnity that seemed almost sacred. Our days settled into a comfortable routine. Robert threw himself into the garden with a fervour I hadn't seen in years. He spent hours digging, planting, and pruning, his hands covered in earth, his face flushed with the satisfaction of nurturing something to life. I found solace in the rhythm of domesticity, cooking meals, arranging furniture, and exploring the market's offerings. Lucy, ever the explorer, found joy in every corner of our new home. She spent her afternoons in the attic, her sanctuary filled with the treasures of the past. Her laughter echoed through the house, a melody that seemed to harmonize with the creaks and groans of the old structure. As the days turned into weeks, I began to explore the house more thoroughly. The attic, with its sloping ceilings and dusty air, became a place of fascination. Old trunks lined the walls, filled with relics from previous occupants, faded photographs, letters tied with ribbon, and toys long forgotten. Each item had a story to tell, a life once lived within these walls. The basement, however, held a different energy. It was darker, colder, as if the sunlight that bathed the rest of the house was reluctant to venture here. I avoided it at first, an irrational fear holding me back, but something about its presence nagged at the edges of my mind. Our interactions with the locals were cordial but cautious. At the diner, I often overheard snippets of conversation about the house, how it had stood empty for years, the stories of those who had lived there before us. The librarian, Mrs. Thompson, was particularly helpful, her eyes lighting up at the mention of the house. "It's a place with history," she said one afternoon, her voice tinged with a mix of reverence and intrigue. "Many have come and gone, but it remains." Lucy found the journal on a rainy afternoon, the sky outside a turbulent sea of grey. She had been searching through the attic, her fingers tracing the outlines of forgotten objects, when she stumbled upon a loose floorboard. Beneath it lay the journal, its leather cover worn and its pages yellowed with age. I joined her in the attic, the air thick with dust and the scent of old paper. Together we blew off the dust, revealing the carefully penned words of a boy named Thomas. His handwriting was neat, the letters looping gracefully across the page. His life unfolded before us, a tapestry of joy and sorrow woven into the fabric of our new home. Thomas's words were a window into a world long past. He wrote of summers spent in the garden, of climbing the ancient oak with his mother watching from below, her laughter a balm to his adventurous spirit. His descriptions were vivid, capturing the essence of a childhood filled with love and happiness. But as we turned the pages, the tone shifted. Thomas's mother fell ill, her decline swift and unexplainable. His words became a chronicle of grief, the joy that once filled their home replaced by a silence that suffocated. He wrote of the barn, his refuge from the oppressive sorrow, where he could pretend, if only for a moment, that everything was as it once had been. The final entries were a heart-wrenching farewell. Thomas spoke of joining his mother, his words filled with longing and a hope for peace. He described the barn and the gun he had found there, a relic of his father's youth. As I read those words, a sense of dread washed over me, the weight of a tragedy that had unfolded long before we arrived. The journal haunted my thoughts, its words echoing in my mind long after we had closed its pages. I became consumed with the need to understand what had happened in our house, to piece together the fragments of a story that had been buried by time. I began spending my days at the town library, poring over records and old newspapers, searching for any mention of the family that had once called our house home. The librarian, Mrs. Thompson, an elderly woman with a kind smile, took pity on me. She guided me through the archives, her fingers deftly flipping through pages of history. "That house has seen its share of sorrow," she said one afternoon, her voice barely more than a whisper. "The boy, Thomas, and his family. They were well loved. But tragedy has a way of leaving its mark." I learned that Thomas's mother had succumbed to a mysterious illness, her death a blow that fractured the family. The father, once a pillar of the community, became a recluse, his grief driving him to madness. The townsfolk spoke of the day he was found in the basement, his life extinguished by his own hand. It was a story whispered behind closed doors, a cautionary tale that lingered in the collective memory of the town. As I delved deeper, I began to notice patterns, stories of other families who had lived in the house, each with their own tales of woe. It was as if the house itself was a vessel for grief, drawing in those who had suffered, feeding on their despair. The realization sent a shiver down my spine, a chill that lingered long after I left the library. I started to question the locals, hoping to piece together more of the house's history. Some were willing to share, their voices hushed as they recounted tales of the house's past occupants. Others were more reticent, their eyes filled with a mix of fear and pity. It was clear that the house was an enigma, a place of both fascination and dread. Back at the house, the atmosphere shifted. The air was charged with an energy that thrummed through the walls, a silent scream that echoed in every room. The doors no longer stayed closed, swinging open with a force that rattled the hinges. The laughter I had once dismissed as the imagination of an old house grew louder, more insistent, as if demanding to be heard. Lucy was affected most of all. Her dreams became vivid, filled with images of the past, of a boy and his mother, their faces etched with sorrow. She spoke of shadows that lingered at the edge of her vision, of whispers that called her name in the night. Her drawings reflected this transformation, the once bright colours now dark and foreboding. Lucy's connection to the spirits seemed to grow stronger with each passing day. She spoke of feeling their presence, of a warmth that enveloped her when she was in the attic or the garden. Her drawings became more intricate, capturing the essence of the spirits with an accuracy that was both beautiful and unsettling. One evening, as we sat together in the living room, Lucy showed me a series of sketches she had been working on. They depicted a boy and his mother, their expressions a mix of joy and sadness. "They want to be heard," she said softly, her eyes meeting mine with a seriousness that belied her years. "They just want someone to listen." The storm hit with a fury that shook the very foundation of the house. The wind howled through the trees, carrying with it a relentless rain that beat against the windows like 1,000 tiny fists. As the storm raged outside, I felt an inexplicable pull towards the basement. The air was thick with a tangible malevolence, a presence that beckoned me to descend the creaking steps. I hesitated at the top, my heart pounding in my chest, but some unseen force compelled me forward, drawn into the darkness below. The basement was a tomb of forgotten dreams, its walls lined with the relics of a past that refused to be silenced. In the dim light of a solitary bulb, I could see the outline of a rope, swaying gently as if caught by an unseen breeze. A voice barely more than a whisper brushed against my ears, its words indistinguishable yet filled with an undeniable sorrow. I stood there, shivering in the cold, my breath visible in the frigid air. The presence was overwhelming, a chorus of voices that rose and fell like the tide, each one a thread in the tapestry of the house's history. I could feel Thomas's father, his grief a living entity that wrapped around me like a shroud. It was as if he was there, his spirit bound to the place of his demise, seeking release from a torment that transcended death. In that moment, I understood the truth. The house was not haunted by malice, but by a desperate plea for understanding, for closure. The spirits of Thomas and his family were trapped, their souls tethered to the place where their lives had unraveled. They needed someone to hear their story, to bear witness to their pain, so they could find peace. The realization brought with it a sense of clarity. I knew we could not stay, for the shadows of the past were too deeply woven into the fabric of the present. With a heavy heart, I gathered my family, and we prepared to leave the house behind. As we packed our belongings, the house seemed to exhale, the oppressive weight lifting as if in acknowledgement of our decision. The shadows receded. The whispers faded, leaving behind a silence that was both comforting and sad. Lucy, ever perceptive, seemed to understand. She stood at the foot of the stairs, her gaze lingering on the attic door, a silent farewell to the spirits who had become a part of her world. Our departure was bittersweet. The town, with its quiet charm and unspoken history, had become a part of us, its people a patchwork of kindness and mystery. As we drove away, I glanced back one last time, the house a silhouette against the fading light. For a fleeting moment, I thought I saw a figure standing in the attic window, a boy, waving goodbye.